This video dives deep into the real story behind the headlines. A battle of power, reputation, and control inside South Africa's justice system. While the media frames it as a feud, many see it as a test of integrity. Can a private investigator challenge a senior police general without consequence? Political analysts argue that Mkhwanazi stands as one of the few clean, disciplined police leaders in the country, unshaken by private agendas or political manipulation. But O'Sullivan's countersuit, double the amount of Mkhwanazi's claim, raises eyebrows and questions about his motives and timing. Join us as we break down the origins of the defamation case between Mkhwanazi and O'Sullivan, the political implications behind the lawsuits, the hidden power struggle between the state and private investigators, why this case could reshape accountability in South Africa's justice system. Subscribe for more in-depth political analysis, legal exposés, and breaking news from South Africa. So without wasting any time, let's get into it.
600 million rand a year. It was a piggy bank for senior cops in the police. And I did that in January this year. Now, at that stage, I hadn't linked anything to do with Mkhwanazi to that. Nothing at all. But what I had done is I picked up links between Mkhwanazi and prior events that took place. And I'm going back to the period of 2012 when he was acting chief of police. He appointed Masemola as the acting head of crime intelligence. And they, between them, took 35 million rand of taxpayer funds from crime intelligence, and they bought 35 million rands worth of luxury cars, and they were shared out amongst the senior hierarchy of the police. In fact, I think there was a Mercedes ML350 that went to the then Minister of Police, Nathi Mtetwa, the fellow that jumped out of the hotel window last week. God rest his soul.
PaulOSullivan's R10 million countersuit against KwaZulu-Natal. Police Commissioner Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi is being painted in the media as a dramatic twist. But when you look closer, it reveals a familiar pattern. One where those who confront state authority turn the spotlight back on themselves when challenged. What O'Sullivan is calling a fight for his reputation may in fact be an attempt to distract the public from the uncomfortable reality that his own conduct, influence, and motives are under scrutiny by one of the country's most respected police leaders.
Well, we're suing him now because of his recent conduct. So we've called, he thinks he can play poker with me. He's going to come unstuck. We've seen his 5 million and we're raising him another 5 million. So we're telling him we want 10 million. If he wants to play games, I'm good at it. I've played these games for many, many years. I have no motive whatsoever other than to live in a country where the crime levels are not what they currently are. And if you look at his conduct, it's only driven because I'm exposing the dark underbelly of the South African Police Service, which includes all of his friends in crime intelligence. You just have to analyze what he's told the Madlangacommission and Parliament, and that is that actually the sun shines out of Kamalo's backside, and nothing can be further from the truth. And I think what we've seen up to now is we've seen Mkhwanazi giving his version of events. I'm applying to appear before the Madlangacommission and give my version of events. And in the meantime, what I haven't done, I haven't called for the people of this country to take the law into their hands and do something drastic against Mkhwanazi like he has done with me. I'm not going to play that game of tit for tat. His game has resulted in social media attacks on me. Fortunately, I don't read social media, so I had one of my staff scan through social media and list all the things that are said on social media by people who I would describe as Mkhwanazi cult followers. And these cult followers say the following: O'Sullivan is a Mossad agent. O'Sullivan is part of the CIA. O'Sullivan is an MI6 spy. O'Sullivan is an Australian spy. O'Sullivan is a double agent working undercover for the Russians. O'Sullivan is an Israeli and not a South African. O'Sullivan is a Zionist and an apartheid Israeli agent. O'Sullivan has 3 passports. Actually, they're wrong there. I've got 4. O'Sullivan is bringing intelligence gathering devices into South Africa. O'Sullivan is behind the police capture saga. Senzo Mchunu was just taking orders from O'Sullivan. Now, for the record, I've never even met or spoken to Senzo Mchunu. O'Sullivan must approve before you can be appointed as police minister. O'Sullivan is appointing commissioners and others for Ramaphosa. O'Sullivan is controlling the government and law enforcers. O'Sullivan is a handler of Ramaphosa. I mean, this is getting hilarious. O'Sullivan is Ramaphosa's wingman. O'Sullivan is one of the big 5 cartel checklist. O'Sullivan is working with the cartels. O'Sullivan is part of the ANC criminal enterprise. O'Sullivan is the COO of the mafia state that is South Africa. O'Sullivan accepted payments from Nhlanhla. I don't even know who the guy is until I read about him in the newspapers. ANC criminal politicians gave O'Sullivan power. O'Sullivan is a Pala kingpin. Again, I only found out about Pala when I read about it in the newspapers. O'Sullivan is the largest investor in Centelina, which is known for child sex abuse. Oh, this is getting tricky now. O'Sullivan sources children and drugs. O'Sullivan is a drug dealer. O'Sullivan is a fugitive from Ireland. Now, this is the result of a lieutenant general in the police using his cult following to attack somebody who I have a record going back to the year 2000, a very clear record of 25 years of carrying out pro bono investigative work in South Africa for the benefit of South Africa as a whole. I have never, ever, ever been engaged in any criminal activity whatsoever. I've had my offices raided by dirty cops. I've been arrested multiple times by dirty cops. And I now have a dirty cop telling the people of the country they must take the law into their own hands and deal with me. So what we actually need to do is sit back and watch, because the Mkhwanazi cult, including his accomplices, who are giving evidence at the madlangacommission and the parliamentary ad hoc committee, I'm not sure when they will finish giving all their evidence, but then it's going to be the time of all the accused. So you have this team of accusers, and then all the people they are accusing will have their chance to come and explain the truth with the facts. And I have the facts. I have the evidence. I don't make outlandish claims that I cannot prove. Everything that I've claimed, I have the evidence, the physical evidence of it, and I will be tabling it. And during the coming week, I'll be calling a media conference to actually launch that document. And the people will be fairly shocked when they realize that the emperor actually is walking around naked.
This entire saga began when Mkhwanazi filed a R5 million defamation lawsuit against O'Sullivan. The private investigator had been on a media campaign, labelling the police commissioner corrupt, compromised, and unfit for office. It wasn't the first time O'Sullivan had hurled accusations at law enforcement officials, but this time he picked a target who would not be bullied into silence. Mkhwanazi, known for his discipline and resistance to political pressure, decided to meet the slander in court rather than in the press. For him, this wasn't about ego. It was about defending the dignity of the uniform and the credibility of the South African police service. O'Sullivan's counterclaim, demanding R10 million, landed like a publicity bomb. He alleges that Mkhwanazi defamed him during testimony before the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry and Parliament's ad hoc committee. But these weren't gossip sessions. They were formal proceedings where Mkhwanazi spoke as a senior police commander, sharing intelligence and institutional concerns. If he mentioned O'Sullivan's name, It was in the context of police operations and legitimate oversight, not personal attacks. Suggesting otherwise is to misunderstand how the state functions. When the head of provincial policing makes a statement under oath, it carries weight precisely because it's not based on rumour.
Do you know the relationship of Precedent and PaulOSullivan?
No, I don't know how related they are. But I just don't know that Mr. PaulOSullivan speaks a lot about being in contact with many people, including the president. So I have not gone deeper into establishing the type of relationship they have.
Does he have do you know of any relationship between him and one of the president's advisors?
Mr. PaulOSullivan? No, not I know of. I know that there is a lot of talks about engagement, I think, with Mr. Chauke and amongst others. But again, it's something that it's communicated out there, but I never really got deeper to investigate the type of relationship that is there.
Through our own intelligence, were you able to establish that PaulOSullivan is a member or a former member of M16?
Well, I have not necessarily got the briefing in details from intelligence in that regard. I've heard the talks about it. I don't have the full briefing. What is of interesting is that he's got citizenship in 3 countries, and that makes me wonder. And he seems to have been a person who got angry when he was disturbed by being removed from the port of entry in South Africa, the main port of entry at the time, which was Johannesburg International Airport. When he was removed, he did not take that kindly. So it will make me conclude that there were some things that were happening in that airport that made him angry.
So we'll be correct to say Mr. PaulOSullivan is one of the rogue elements that are destabilizing SAPS and wanting to capture every senior police officer at SAPS, and if you don't cooperate, he start engaging in blackmailing activities.
With no doubt, I'm going to invite the parliament through the structures of intelligence or structures of security and whoever structures you can come up with, to look at the time of Mr. Robert McBride Turner as the head of IPD. How they were interacting with PaulOSullivan. Bank movements, money movements, the meeting venues, the cell phone locations where they meet, how they engage in terms of investigation. I'm saying this to the members because it is that which Mr. Nkabinde told me, who is now a chief of staff at the office of the minister, that operations of IPD were planned, coordinated, and executed at PaulOSullivan's house. That was his words to me. So I'm going to require that such be investigated in details, because the phone will put McBride in this place, will put PaulOSullivan in this place, will put Nkabinde in this place, and others. And when that investigation is conducted, nobody can deny it, because we'll know exactly that all of them have been operating guided by PaulOSullivan. And that is on one side. And I'm interested to know, honorable members, as to who is the author of the report that was produced when the city of Johannesburg, as well as the National Commissioner, wrote to the State Security asking them about the legality or otherwise of the gadget that were bought by the city of Johannesburg at the time when Jairus Bia was in charge of the security in that place. And who is the company that supplied that gadget? And how was that gadget sourced from the country in Europe where it comes from, in the UK? And I want to also recommend an investigation against the purchase of the similar gadget that was bought by DPCI back in 2010, where Jairus Bia was working at DPCI at the time. Whether such was bought legally, who are the supplier, and who's the manufacturer of the things. And I'll want the parliament to check every financial records of Mr. PaulOSullivan and all the individuals I've mentioned, and so that we're able to trace and draw a conclusion whether is PaulOSullivan a clean man or is an agent. So I think based on that investigation, we're able to conclude whether is he indeed a clean man or he is what is being said in public, an agent. If he's a clean man, why he does what he does? If he's an agent, who is he working for? But it is time that this country must not sit back and be run by Mr. PaulOSullivan. And if government fails to act on it, the men and women in this country, they're going to take it upon themselves to do something drastic on it. And it might not be what this government wants to do, because he has gone too deep in showing that he's got control all over. And maybe lastly, I might ask the members to say, if we ever heard of any report that is deemed to be classified, that's supposed to expose the wrong that has happened, such reports be interrogated. And one of them, IPID has a responsibility to investigate criminal things.
The question then becomes, why would O'Sullivan double down? The answer may lie in perception. For years, he has positioned himself as South Africa's maverick crime fighter, exposing wrongdoing where the state allegedly fails. But beneath that image lies a man who operates in a grey zone, half investigator, half political actor, often blurring the line between justice and showmanship. Every time the system pushes back, O'Sullivan claims victimhood, as though accountability only applies to others. His R10 million countersuit, then, reads not as a legitimate grievance, but as an attempt to regain control of the public narrative. Mkhwanazi, by contrast, has never sought the limelight. He rose through the ranks quietly, serving with distinction under multiple national commissioners. His record has no stain of corruption, no whispers of political capture, no evidence of personal enrichment. When he testifies or speaks out, it's because his role demands it, not because he craves attention. For him, this is about principle, about defending the integrity of policing against private individuals who believe their personal investigations should override official processes. Politically, this case also exposes a deeper tension in South Africa. The uneasy coexistence between state institutions and self-appointed crusaders who claim to fight corruption. While O'Sullivan enjoys media access and public sympathy, figures like Mkhwanazi bear the burden of governance, balancing law enforcement, community safety, and national security under constant political pressure. In this light, O'Sullivan's attack seems less like whistleblowing and more like a calculated strike against a man who refuses to yield authority to private interests. This is not to say that O'Sullivan's past contributions to exposing wrongdoing are meaningless. But in this moment, his approach has turned combative and theatrical, overshadowing the very justice he claims to defend. His counterclaim seeks headlines, not healing. It's a distraction dressed as litigation, and it forces the public to forget that Mkhwanazi's original lawsuit was a legitimate response to defamatory conduct. The commissioner is defending his name and office, not waging a vendetta.
Well, he may be doing a good job in some aspects, but what you have to do is go behind the job that he's doing. What about the company that he has? I've not heard any mention of that, but last year, on June the 26th, and this is something that we should invite him to come on air and explain. He bought a company called Dream Deal Trading and Investments, Pty Limited. Now, what's a career policeman doing buying a company called Dream Deal Trading and Investments, Pty Limited? He bought it in June last year, and the person he bought it from is a convicted fraudster. I've got the case number, I've got all the evidence. I've spoken to the investigating officer to confirm that it's not a mistake on the criminal system. This person was convicted in 2009 under Pretoria Central CAS 779 of 5, 2009. He was convicted of fraud. And last year in June, he sold a company called Dream Deal Trading and Investments Pty Limited. He sold it to Mkhwanazi. Now, what is all that about? How does that fit in? Somebody needs to explain that. Why a Create Cop needs a company called Dream Deal Trading and Investments. And I note for the record that he doesn't make any disclosures. He doesn't take either the Madlangacommission Commission or the parliamentary committee into his confidence there. And when he gave evidence to the Madlangacommission Commission, quite funnily, he laughs and jokes about how he had to speak to his wife and say, what is it with Louis Vuitton? How much is it? But what he didn't do, he did not deny receiving a Louis Vuitton bag from a police supplier. And surely that's what he should have done, rather than joking and looking up into the sky while he's joking about asking his wife how much a Louis Vuitton bag costs. Of course she wouldn't know, because the bag was given by a police supplier. It wasn't paid for. So those are the sort of things that the people need to get answers to. And to jump on this bandwagon of taking drastic action, taking the law into their own hands and making all these false allegations about me. There's no evidence. If he's got evidence, let him bring that evidence and put it on the table. He hasn't got any evidence. And the reason he hasn't got any evidence, Alec, is because I do everything above board. Last year, I paid 3 million in taxes. How can I pay 3 million in tax if I'm a criminal?
If this battle reaches the courtroom, the outcome will carry symbolic weight far beyond the two men involved. If O'Sullivan succeeds, it will send a dangerous message that public officials cannot speak freely or defend their institutions without being dragged into costly civil wars of reputation. But if Mkhwanazi prevails, it will affirm that the police, as an arm of the state, still have authority over those who seek to undermine them through noise and narrative. At its heart, this is not a case about who said what, but about what kind of South Africa we want. One ruled by institutions or by individuals with loud voices and private investigators. Mkhwanazi's decision to stand firm is not just an act of self-preservation, it is an act of public service. In an era when it is fashionable to distrust authority, his refusal to be intimidated should be seen for what it truly is. A reminder that leadership sometimes means staying silent until the courtroom doors open and letting the truth, not the noise, do the talking. If you made it this far, I assume you really enjoyed this video. Please help us by liking the video and subscribing to our channel. Also let us know, what do you think of this shocking story in the comments section. Thank you for watching.